Good morning, St. Philip's, and welcome to this Wednesday devotion in Holy Week. The gospel lesson that is assigned for this morning comes from Matthew chapter 26, and it describes some of the final moments that Jesus would spend with his disciples prior to his crucifixion. It is a section of scripture that is filled with darkness and foreboding. In fact, the centerpiece of Matthew chapter 26 is the betrayal of Jesus by one of his own, by Judas Iscariot for 30 pieces of silver. You can feel the tension in the air as you read the text. You can sense the forces of evil gathering around the head of the Son of Man. It's the final act in this grand drama of Jesus' life and ministry on earth. And yet it's a passage of Scripture that I find to be tremendously encouraging. For in the midst of all of this darkness, there is a peace. There is a calm. You know, when I think of the disciples at this point in their life and ministry with Jesus, they remind me, and I've said this many times before, of people who lived along the coast of South Carolina in an age before accurate weather forecasting. We know when a storm is coming our way, don't we? We have ample warning, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, that a storm has formed in the Atlantic and perhaps maybe headed toward Charleston and South Carolina. We have the blessings of Doppler radar and the spaghetti models. We know well in advance whether we should stock up, whether we should pack up, or whether we should get out of the way. But there was a time in history not so long ago when people did not have the advantage of advanced warning. You might get up early in the morning and the weather might seem fair. You would go out and work on your chores, but before long the situation would begin to deteriorate. You would see the storm clouds forming on the horizon. You would begin to feel the wind pick up and the rain spit against your face. And soon you would discover that you were being threatened by a hurricane. A hurricane that threatened to sweep away everything that you had worked for. A hurricane that perhaps threatened even your family and your life. Well, that's the way it was for the disciples at this point in Matthew chapter 26. They didn't know it, but a storm was about to break on their lives. Now, of course, it wasn't a case where they hadn't been warned. Jesus had actually warned them that this storm was coming over the course of the previous 3 years on numerous occasions. But they had refused to believe, refused to listen until now. The crisis moment had at last arrived. It was a period, as I said, of darkness. It was a period of fear and anxiety. It was a period of great tension. And yet it was also, as I mentioned earlier, a time of great encouragement. For in the midst of all of this darkness and heaviness, there was one who remained placid and calm. And that, of course, was Jesus. All the more remarkable when you consider the fact that of all the people who were being threatened by this storm, Jesus was in the most danger. His was the one life that would be forfeit as a consequence of this storm. And yet Jesus remained, as I said, calm, even serene, and more importantly for us, in control. Sometimes when we think about the death of Jesus Christ, when we think about his suffering and passion on the cross, we get into our heads the idea that Jesus was a victim, an innocent victim of circumstance. And while it's true that Jesus was indeed a victim, a tragic victim, an innocent victim, we must never think for even a moment that Jesus was an unwilling victim. The gospel is very clear. Nobody took the Lord's life. The Romans did not take Jesus' life. The Jewish religious leaders did not take Jesus' life. And Judas Iscariot, for all his scheming and betrayal, did not take the Lord's life. No power on earth could have taken Jesus' life. The Gospels tell us Jesus gave up his life. Jesus was calm, but Jesus was in control of the events of his life from the moment of his entry into Jerusalem until the moment of his arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane. And my friends, that should be a tremendous encouragement to us in the midst of our present coronavirus crisis. For I think most of us would agree a storm has broken on our lives. It is a threatening storm, one that threatens to take away so much that we hold dear. Not just our freedom, but for some people, their health, and for others, sad to say, maybe even family members. But the good news of Holy Week, the good news of Good Friday, the good news of Easter is that the one who was in control 2,000 years ago is still the one who is in control today. The Bible tells us that not a sparrow falls from the sky, that God does not take note of it. Not a hair of our head shall fall without the Lord's express approval. Jesus was the Lord of heaven and earth then. He is the Lord of heaven and earth today. And because of his passion, because of his resurrection, my friends, Jesus Christ holds the keys to death and to Hades. No one, not you, not me, not our loved ones, will depart this earth. No matter what the coronavirus may do, none of us will depart this earth without the express approval of the Lord of glory. So as Jesus managed to weather his storm, and not just weather it, but rise above it and become triumphant through his glorious resurrection, let us, as people of the cross and people of the resurrection, likewise take heart, knowing that we too shall triumph. Oh, there may be a cross on the horizon. There may be a time of difficulty, of pain and sorrow and separation. But joy comes in the morning. Following the cross, there's always a tomb, an empty tomb, and beyond that, a glorious crown. So in this Holy Week, let us walk with Jesus, and let us rejoice, because we know how the story ends. It ends with glory and with happiness. God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you on Easter.